Good afternoon and welcome to Module 4. This is a review of Module 3, information on Module 4, and a heads up for Module 5. I'm going to review Module 3, talk a little bit about the assignment. I'm going to go over research. I'm going to talk about assignment for Module 4 and 5, and we'll have any questions, but those, of course, can be posted in class. Try to earn all the participation points, and the earlier in the week you can do it, the more time you can devote the end of the week to working on assignments. Submit on time. Discussion boards are due by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Papers are due on Sunday by 11:59 p.m. And by leaving the weekend to only have to do one thing can help decrease your stress. Aid is an important thing to consider for both your postings and your papers. And this is where critical thinking comes in. Use application and analysis skills. Use information and analysis. Use depth and details, examples, and explanations. Discussion 3, you needed to write an internal and an external message. You needed to consider the specific audience needs, and this was important. You needed to use the overseas supplier scenario that was provided in the rubric for the paper. You should not have used any other scenario than the overseas supplier. You then were supposed to review internal and external messages posted by others, and the content was the focus of the suggestions. I was not looking for just all copy editing, use this word instead of this word, rewrite this sentence. I was looking for some content suggestions. Discussion 4 is going to have an internal and external thread. You're going to pick someone's message from Module 3. You can pick the same one if you want to. You can pick the internal and external message from the same person if you want to. You are then going to review, based on the message, brand, legal, and compliance issues. This is critical, critical, critical. The brand, legal, and compliance issues are part of the final paper. Do not post your review as an attachment. What you're going to do is post the message, the original message that you're reviewing. Then underneath it, you're going to write brand, legal, and compliance implications. It is usually better if you separate brand, legal, and compliance implications. For your engagement postings, you are going to provide supporting or conflicting comments on what somebody posted about brand, legal, or compliance, and one of your responses can be to one of my postings. And it counts towards your requirement of 2. This is important. In Module 5, the initial posting is due on Monday. Monday. There is no paper due for Module 4, so my suggestion is that once you complete the discussion board for this week, you start working on the requirements for what is due on Monday. Use the Milestone 3 Module 5 rubric. It talks about writing an internal and external message. The internal and external message are what need to be posted on Monday. Select either an offensive or defensive strategy. Offensive is proactive, and it might be about a new policy. And this section is on discrimination. So it could be a new policy that has been created to avoid discrimination. Or it could be a defensive or reactive strategy, and that is if the problem is known. So for instance, if you had an issue of discrimination against a religious group or against a gender or against ages, that is a known problem. Therefore, your message would need to be a defensive strategy and reacting to the problem. Again, it is about discrimination as explained in the rubric. You are then going to claim, and I put that in quotation marks, a person whose message or messages, if you want to pick the same person for internal and external, you will review. Your review is due by Thursday. You cannot pick a person who's already been picked or claimed by someone else. So if someone posts, I am going to review your message by Thursday, no one else can do that person until everyone has a reviewer. Please read the announcements and any emails that I post. Read the feedback provided on the papers. Some of it is embedded in the papers and you need to download the paper to look at it. Don't just look at points, because there are adjustments you're going to need to make based on the feedback. Some of the adjustments may be for the next paper, and some may need to be what you need to incorporate into the final paper. And if you have assignment questions, please ask them before 10 p.m. on Sunday. Faculty have 6 days to submit feedback. I try to get it to you within 2 to 3 days. The good news is you get feedback quickly. The bad news is I expect improvements and you lose more points for repeat errors and issues. Grading takes time, so please take the time to read the comments. A really good paper that has basically no problems with it, it probably takes me about 15 minutes to grade. A problem that is not well written, may not be following the directions, usually takes about 45 minutes. If I average that to 30, with a class of 26 students, that's 13 hours of grading. I do try to start on Sunday or Saturday if papers are submitted early, so I don't have to do all starting on Monday. Research. I keep saying that you need to use research, you need to use business journal articles, that you shouldn't rely on websites for your research. Many of them are not credible or reliable, and some of them are cheap sites, so you need to avoid those. Site selling services are not good sources. Blogs are not good sources. So I've gone to the Shapiro Library. I log into the library, and you can see I highlighted in yellow in the search bar discrimination, since that is the topic for this week. Discrimination, I probably need more to hone in more on the topic, since I get 1.7 million articles, nearly 1.8 million articles. I then click on advanced search, and you can see when I click on advanced search, new boxes come up. So I add human resource issues as a search parameter, and I get down to 9,000 articles. Still a lot of articles, and I'm sure none of you want to go through 9,000 articles. I add another parameter, public relations, and I get down to 709. Certainly not as many as you're going to look at, but more doable. And also, it's closer to what you need for the paper. So that is how you find things in the library. Specific words get better articles. Discrimination was almost 1.8 million. Discrimination and HR was 9,700. And discrimination, HR, and PR got me down to 709. There are basically two databases, ProQuest, which includes all the reference information, and Abesco Host, which includes the reference information in an abstract. I personally prefer Abesco Host because I don't think I can always judge the value of an article on just the title. So if I use Abesco Host, I get some information about the article, and it makes it easier for me to select the one that's right for what I'm doing. Google Scholar is another good source. You can see I typed Google Scholar into, or scholar.google.com into the search bar. I put in discrimination. I also checked articles. I don't want case law. I only want articles. When I get into discrimination, you can see on the left-hand side, I can select more updated articles. So I might select since 2018 because those would be more up to date. I check only include citations. I do not want patents. And again, you have some abstract, so you can select which article makes the most sense for what you're trying to do. Peer-reviewed articles are good, but they are by experts in the field. They require a lot of review, sometimes a year from writing to approval. It's based on empirical research and harder to read longer articles. They're great if you want to use them, but I'm only requiring business journal articles, which are easier to read, more up to date. They're a greater help with paper, and they're more accessible through the Shapiro Library and through business journal websites. Best practices, you need a cover page, you need at least 3 headings in APA. The summary is not a repeat of the agenda, and even better if you use a conclusion, and references need to be in APA format. Also required, match citations and references. Avoid first person, you, and contractions, which are not allowed in APA. The easiest way to avoid first person is to rewrite the sentence rather than saying, I believe that this type of approach is the best. You could just say this type of approach is the most effective. Make sure you address all the content requirements. Eliminate redundancies and review your paper before submitting it. As I've said to you before, read it aloud. These were the suggested headings for the Milestone 2 paper: communication context, communication need, internal communication. All of those are main centered headings. It was then suggested that you use type and purpose, target audience, and draft as your subheadings or level 2 headings. The type, purpose, target audience, and draft were all underneath internal and external, which is why they really shouldn't be main centered headings. External was another main heading, and you had the same subheadings as internal. Conditions, communication strategy, which really was your summary, and you needed a heading for your references. So these were the suggested headings for Milestone 2. Points were lost for not including all the required elements. Not using the supplier working condition scenario. If you used another scenario, you lost points. Not writing messages that were appropriate for the target audience. Not having the internal message signed by a high-level executive. Not using press release format. You don't want to write a press release and then write it like a memo. Especially for external, if it wasn't a press release, how are you going to get the message out? If it was a memo or a letter, how are you going to get the message out to your stakeholders? And matching citations and references. Just something else to point out. To write, this is for customers, suppliers, and other stakeholders. Customers and suppliers are stakeholders. It doesn't make sense to say other stakeholders. If you said you were addressing an internal message to the HR department and employees and other stakeholders, that doesn't make sense. Either list all of the departments or just employees, because all employees are stakeholders. Contractors are not internal. Suppliers are not internal. Vendors are not internal. And shareholders are not internal. Owners, if it's a single owner kind of company, would be internal. Basically, internal is people who work for the company. Make sure you read aloud before submitting, review your previous feedback, and in the Module 3 video, there's all kinds of information on writing for you. Your writing should be clear and concise. It should be comprehensive. Those are not mutually exclusive. Clear and concise is the writing, comprehensive is the content. It should be analytical, insightful, use examples, and supporting evidence, which is your research. A couple of reminders. Nothing is impossible. The word itself says, I'm possible. Love that quote. If you have questions, please post them in class, and hopefully this has been helpful for you. Thanks for listening.